Hello, welcome to the Raptors Weekly Podcast for the week of October 24th. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm joined to talk about what is potentially a catastrophic week to start the season, but joining me on the line is Joseph Casciaro of theScore. What's up? What's up, Cash?
Not much, man. How are you? Catastrophic. Jeez, I didn't think you were going to jump off the deep end that quick.
I mean, it's potentially catastrophic. You gotta couch out these aggressive predictions with very, very soft, unpredictable words. You know, that's how predictions are made in the sport media game.
It's true. It's true.
But okay. So Jared Sullinger. The big news of the day is Jared Sullinger is going to be missing some time. I think at minimum, I think it's going to be a couple of weeks because they are inserting a screw into the fifth metatarsal of his foot. That he has kept him out basically since the first preseason game. I mean, Cash, what are your initial thoughts on this injury right here?
To be honest, there's a bit of confusion. Well, first, I'm not all that surprised. I honestly, I've been saying to friends, coworkers, anyone I talk Raptors with, that I was concerned pretty much from the beginning, just because, hell, man, if a big man has a blister on his foot, I get concerned. Like anything regarding feet when it comes to big men, especially men as big as Jared Sullinger, concerns me. So I guess I'd say I'm not that surprised that it's worse than we originally thought. But what I'm kind of confused about is, I guess, is the description of the injury, because, if you read what the official release from the Raptors, it says that they're doing this as a preventative measure, and that it's about a stress reaction in Sullinger's foot. And I don't know, obviously none of us are doctors, none of us went to medical school, but any kind of research you can do online about it seems to say that, obviously a stress reaction is nowhere near as bad as a stress fracture. It's kind of like the beginning phase of something that could lead to a stress fracture. So I think what I'm confused about is why they're inserting a screw in his foot when it's only a stress reaction and not a stress fracture. But, I guess that's neither here nor there. Either way, it's not good, and he's got a screw in his foot now. He's a big man. He's in a contract year. There's just so much about this is not good for him or for the team.
I have a theory about that, which is when I'm playing doctor right now, even though we explicitly said we're not doctors. Apparently, Sullinger had a stress fracture in that same left foot in the 2014-15 season. So there's kind of a history with this injury.
Boy.
So I think they're probably looking into that past injury history, taking this into account and just playing it safe. When he had that fracture, he missed 10 weeks and then came back before the end of the season. I looked it up. He came back basically on the eve of the season. He kind of rushed his recovery back and didn't look good in the regular season. He played 7 games to end that season, averaged 5 points on 31% shooting. Clearly it wasn't himself, but if there's any consolation, the Celtics, which Sullinger was on at the time, they went on to play the Cavaliers in the playoffs in that first round, and Sullinger was probably their best player. He had 3 games with 10 or more points, including a 21-point outing at one point. So, there's kind of a history there too, and so that's not good.
That's honestly terrifying, man, and not even just from the team perspective, but if you're looking at it from the player's perspective. This is a contract year for him. It's going to be a free agent next year. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of money out there on the market and a lot of teams throwing money around. But, if he hits the market as a guy who's 2 times in the last 3 years either had a stress fracture or had a stress reaction and needed a screw in his foot, and he's already a big man with a history of, weight issues and, not exactly great reports about his conditioning and things like that, obviously not a good sequence of events for Sullinger.
Yeah, exactly. Like if he could only get the 1-year mid-level exception from the Raptors after playing 81 games last season, and now he's coming into the season injured. I mean, yeah, it sucks. But for the Raptors, I think it sucks even more because Sullinger was penned in sort of as the starting power forward before the season started. Obviously, he was injured in preseason, so that sort of plan sort of went out the window. But yeah, what do you think the Raptors should do now that their front court is down a couple bodies?
I think, it's kind of the boring answer, but I think for right now, stand pat, don't do much. whether Patterson started or not, I think most people assumed that Patterson would still be kind of like, the closer, if you will, part of the closing unit. Most of the Raptors' best units last year were with Patterson on the floor. I think if they can get DeMarre Carroll healthy, those like Lowry, Joseph, DeRozan, Carroll, JV units are still good. Put Patterson in with some of those instead of JV. Like, I still think this team can come up with plenty of units that would be better than, what the other team is throwing out there on most nights. So to be honest, I don't think I'm as concerned as most are about this injury. Like, I don't think this really alters the Raptors ceiling much or lowers their floor. I still think they're a really good team that's probably going to be a top 2 or 3 seed, barring another bad injury. But yeah, the depth is certainly concerning because now you're looking at, you've got Pat and JV, but Pat still isn't a proven starter. His excellence in certain areas is probably because he's playing against reserves most of the time. JV had an awful Olympics, had a terrible preseason, doesn't look himself.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah, I mean, and the hope there, I guess, yeah, like you said, we'll talk about it. The hope is that, that's just he gets that out of the way. His season starts and he's a new guy. But yeah, JV hasn't been great. Patterson, I think we all know what he is, and he's a really great guy to have on your team, but I don't know if you're comfortable going forward with him as your number 2 big. Sullinger's got some serious injury issues now. I think Bebe, I'm sure he'll be fine, but didn't he hurt his ankle in the last preseason game?
Yeah, he limped off. He looked pretty bad.
So there you go. And then you're looking at a case where, like, at least in the short term, like, who's this team's third big man? Siakam? Again, Siakam had a great preseason. He looked good. He looked energetic. He was bouncy. But I don't think a team that, wants to win 50 to 55 games and make a deep run in the playoffs again should be going into the season with Pascal Siakam as potentially their third big man.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too, because if you notice Casey's rotations throughout preseason, obviously Sullinger only played that one preseason game to open the calendar against the Warriors, and then after that, Siakam was the one who got the starts, not Patterson, which is not surprising either because they like Patterson off the bench. They like Patterson off the bench, so I could actually foresee a scenario where they continue to start with Siakam, even though he is more unproven than someone like Louis Scola, who held down the role. He was 2 seasons last year, and now we have no seasoning at all. But yeah, I mean, would you rather start Patterson at 4, or would you try to plug it out with Siakam as the de facto starter and keep the rotations intact?
I'd go with the latter. I'd try sticking it out with Siakam as your starter. Hope Siakam can give you even, just because he's a starter doesn't mean you need 20 minutes from the guy. If Siakam can give you even 12 to 15 minutes of like solid play, I'd take that, and then you try to fill in the gaps elsewhere. And then you bring Patterson off the bench, but still hope he can give you like 25 to 30 minutes, which I do think he's capable of. So I think the smart play and probably the safe play that Casey will go with is keep the rotations the way they are, keep Patterson coming off the bench, but he'd still be the second big in terms of minutes.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you there because I think it's so many. You have to adjust so many things if you have to adjust your entire rotation by bringing Patterson in because Patterson is one of the 2 linchpins of that bench unit. The way it's constructed, and the Raptors, based on preseason, they clearly weren't going to shuffle up anything they did last year. They're pretty much going in with the same game plan, same rotations, everything like that. So one of the other things that bothers me. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, no, continue.
Okay, yeah, one of the other things that bothers me about this, that worries me about the Sullinger injury is that I was actually looking forward to seeing Sullinger play a lot of minutes at backup 5 behind Jonas because that's mostly where he found success in the last 2 seasons in Boston was as a center. And, while he's not a traditional center in the sense that he can't really protect the basket, but he's a good positional defender, and he's a really good defensive rebounder. So, you can have that. Especially with a defensive rebounder, you can pair that with Patterson, who is not a good defensive rebounder, and have that as the bench unit. So now the Raptors don't have a backup center anymore, quote unquote. So they have to lean on one of Bebe or Pirtle. Which one of those 2 do you think should take up that role as the backup center there?
I think based on some flashes he showed last year, and even for a little bit what we saw in the preseason, I'd probably give the edge to Bebe right now. Obviously, we have to see how bad his ankle is, but if they both go in healthy, I'd give the edge to Bebe. I thought, look, Bebe is obviously not, a perfect backup big man for a somewhat contender in 2016, but I definitely think he's a little more NBA ready, I guess would be the word, than Poeltl right now, who I don't think looked all that great in the preseason. Looked kind of uncomfortable a lot of times on the court. Whereas Bebe, look, I think, here and there he'll have a night. We saw it last year. I think it was the game at Atlanta where the Raptors had that late comeback where, Bebe looked more than just NBA ready. He looked like a legitimate rotation big. I think he can have nights like that.
Yeah, that was the Bebe revenge game.
Yeah,
Atlanta
yeah,
was the ones
exactly.
who originally drafted him, yeah.
For the Lou Williams throw-in. I think with Poeltl there's a lot of questions there, whereas with Bebe, I guess the floor is a little higher on a night-to-night basis. So, again, if Dwayne Casey usually is the kind of coach who goes with the safest option, and I can't blame him for that. So I think Bebe is that option.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I also think that Bebe has more upside too, just a higher floor and also more upside from game to game. But I thought Poeltl stabilized himself a little bit towards the end of the preseason, but yeah, you got to give Bebe a shot anyway. But yeah, I think basically with the Sullinger thing, like it's gonna have repercussions all the way down the line, and that sucks. Hopefully he'll be back. I mean, I don't know. I guess. See, that's the thing, right? We don't really know exactly what the nature of the injury is. That's why it's hard to even, do some cursory Google searches to find similar cases, because most cases are fractures, stress fractures of the fifth metatarsal, and you got cases like Ben Simmons, for example, who had that injury. Ben Simmons apparently is going to come back in January, so he's going to miss like 2 months, whereas, I don't know. I mean, presumably, Sullinger will miss less time than that because the injury is less severe, but you also don't know. And also, one thing I'm concerned about is you got a guy with weight issues who, to his credit, did slim down. He was down to 260 heading into preseason. But yeah, this is a foot injury. He's going to be off his feet for a long time. And that's going to be difficult. That's going to be very, very difficult. So I'm not even sure you can immediately use him once he comes back, which leaves my question of, do you think the Raptors, let's assume that Sullinger is not going to be very productive going forward this season because of the injury, do you think the Raptors should make a trade of some sort to add some depth or to maybe add some credibility to the front court?
I honestly don't think it's necessary right now. I mean, look, obviously, if we're talking later down the line of the season and a guy like Millsap becomes available or an Aldridge or, who knows, if there's a legitimate difference maker that, becomes available in trade talks, then absolutely go for it. But if we're talking just about an early season trade to address some depth issues in the front court because Sullinger's hurt, I honestly don't think it's necessary yet. I say let the season play out a bit, see what you have. Maybe they get through a month and a half without Sullinger, based on – the other thing, too, to remember is as much as – you kind of talk down about continuity. I'm guilty of it myself. I don't necessarily think it plays that big of a factor in winning and losing basketball games. At the same time, if it is going to play a factor, it would probably be at the beginning of the season when some newer teams are getting used to playing with each other. So, maybe the Raps' continuity of the roster kind of helps them survive Sullinger's loss early on while other teams are kind of settling into their new rosters. So, like I said, I'd let the season play out for at least a few weeks, a month and a half, and then see where you are there. If you're in good shape, and you're expecting Sullinger back around that time, I really don't think, just a depth type trade is necessary.
True. Yeah, okay. So in the meantime, the Raptors front court, it wasn't really a position of strength to begin with, even with everyone healthy. I think with Sullinger going down, I think that puts a little bit more onus on Jonas Valanciunas, who, like I said earlier, I thought Sullinger was definitely going to play some backup 5 minutes. Now that's no longer there. And obviously Bismack Biyombo is no longer there because he got a massive contract from Orlando in free agency. By the way, Orlando is posting him up as a power forward.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that's just cruel. That's cruel, man. I don't want to see that. I wish Bismack didn't leave.
They paid the guy for a reason, because he excelled at certain areas of the game. And I think what happens so many times when teams do that, when they, maybe overpay a bit for a guy's career year, and because he's a master in certain areas, they almost look at it as like, well, now we invested all this money in him and we're going to have him for 4 years and we can invest time in him. So now we can turn him into like a more complete player, or we can, fix the holes in his game. But I think with a guy like Biyombo, that's not going to work. That's never going to happen. You paid him to be who he was last year at his absolute best. And I think you have to accept that that's who he's going to be.
Yeah. Well, Orlando's not necessarily a very logical team. I mean, they signed Jeff Green to a $50 million deal, so. But, yeah. So, what I was saying is this puts a lot more onus on Jonas to be very productive. Because
nice word for there.
Yeah, I know. Onus on Jonas. I'm a regular Clyde Frazier. Yeah, so I have my concerns with Jonas because, like you said off the top, Jonas had a pretty bad couple of months now. Basically, I mean, he went from, holy crap, look at what he's doing to Hassan Whiteside in the Miami Heat series, to, wow, what an underwhelming Olympics performance where he averaged like 7 points on 40% shooting, and then his coach called him out. And then Dwayne Casey, I thought, they didn't really get picked up anywhere else, but he kind of said, like, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about Jonas's conditioning. He wasn't at tip-top shape, which I think his coach speak for, like, this dude is not in shape yet. Which, it's fine. He's rusty, and he took some time off. It's normal. But, yeah, he went on to not look great in preseason. And, yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on Jonas's hands. So does that concern you? Like, what do you expect out of Jonas this year?
It definitely concerns me at least a little, and especially because of all the other things we talked about, right? The lack of front court depth going in, even if everyone was healthy, let alone with Sullinger out and maybe Bebe out. So, yeah, definitely cause for concern. Having said that, though, I really, really, really find it difficult to read too much into the preseason. And I know it was more than just preseason. It was the Olympics, too. But for the most part, I try to read as little into how a player performs in an international tournament and how he performs in preseason, unless we're talking about like a really, really young, unproven player. And I think JV is at least somewhat proven, so I'm not that concerned about his preseason performance. But look, there are obvious flaws with Jonas that I don't know will ever be corrected. The way the league is going, smaller, and if you are a bigger guy, you've got to be a little more versatile. You've got to be able to move. You've got to be able to defend pick and rolls. And maybe not necessarily defend the perimeter, but, move around that area. I think there's certain areas where, even if he had a great preseason, I'd still be concerned about Jonas in the modern NBA. But in terms of his overall game, I still think, once the ball tips up on Wednesday night, I call it blind faith, but I'm still convinced we'll see a lot more of the Jonas we saw last spring than the Jonas we saw this summer.
Yeah, that's what I hope for as well. But I don't know. I also have my doubts because maybe it's just I'm reading a little bit too much into the the modernization of the game and whatnot. But at a minimum, I think that there are almost against any team in the league, Jonas is almost always going to have at least one player on that opposing team that he struggles to defend because they can sort of extend a range out to the three-point line. And what worried me most is like you got guys like John Lure who traditionally give Jonas some trouble, and John Lure is like he's just a run-of-the-mill bench dude who he struggles to guard sometimes. So like that's why I think like if you need more minutes, I think ultimately you need more minutes out of Jonas, especially now that Sullinger's gone. You just need more minutes out of him. But it's also hard to play him more minutes because a lot of the reason why he's never played 30 minutes or more in his career is not because he's not good enough. It's because he can't defend ably against certain matchups. And now, I don't know. I guess there'll be more trial by fire with Jonas, which, hey, that's what fans have been calling for. We've been calling for more opportunities for Jonas, and now he will get it. It's like sink or swim situation. Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing they can do if Jonas does look okay to start the season, I think, and a lot of people have talked about this, is maybe you try some bench units out with at least one of, if not both, Lowry and DeMar off, and see if Jonas can fend for himself. Not necessarily, obviously not initiating the offense, but being the focal point of an offense. I think I want to see how he handles that in stretches this season. So I think that's one way to get maybe not more minutes, but more usage out of him. And yeah, from a minutes perspective, it's funny because you think about like the best pure centers in the league. There aren't many of them left, but guys like DeAndre Jordan and Andre Drummond and Hassan Whiteside, those are the guys that Jonas actually performs best against because it's the easiest kind of physical matchup for him. Like you were saying, you can't have Jonas defending a stretch five. It just doesn't work. So I think I think his key to getting more minutes, aside from maybe Dwayne Casey trusting him to anchor some bench units, is when there are those games when it's not an ideal matchup for JV defensively. And Casey's talked about this too. If Jonas wants to play, when another team goes small, that means on the offensive end, he's absolutely going to punish teams and dominate them and really make them regret going small and make the other coach think about how they're losing on the defensive end because, they have no one who can guard Jonas, as opposed to it always being the other way around, where Dwayne Casey and Raptors fans are worrying about how Jonas is going to defend this 6'7" guy that the other team is playing at center.
Mm-hmm. All right, 2 more questions and we'll let you go. 1, do you think DeMarre Carroll is going to play some more time as a power forward, as a de facto power forward this year, because of the injuries and just generally speaking?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, if there is any small kind of blessing in disguise element of them being without Sullinger for a little while, maybe it is that Dwayne Casey is a lot more willing to go with some kind of funky, smaller, versatile lineups that have Carroll at the 4 because, like we were talking about, last year before Carroll went down, the Lowry, Joseph, DeRozan, Carroll, Valanciunas lineup was by far the Raptors' best lineup, and it was with Carroll as the de facto 4. So I think they're gonna have to explore those options now with all the injuries in the front court, and I think it could work out really well for them. Look, if DeMarre Carroll's healthy, that's just an element that this team never had last year. The versatility he brings defensively and the ability that he brings for this team to experiment with lineups that can really be effective is exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. Although it does worry me a little bit though. Like you said, if DeMarre Carroll is healthy, right? Like, obviously, Dwayne Casey made some headlines when he was speaking at Media Day a couple weeks ago when he said DeMarre Carroll's still not 100% healthy yet. And, we did see him miss some time in preseason. So my main concern there is not necessarily that he's not healthy. My main concern is that playing power forward, as Shane Battier once famously explained, it takes a lot out of you, especially when you're, a prototypical wing player sliding a position up. So I'm concerned a little bit about the wear and tear on Carroll, but like you said, I'm also intrigued by the possibility and what benefits that could bring when the Raptors go small. All right, last question before we let you go. So Fred VanVleet got the 15th man spot, which I think everyone expected. However, I don't know if his job is fully safe. Not only because he's on an unguaranteed contract, but also because if a trade were to happen, if the Raptors decided, you know what, Siakam's too young, we need to pick up a veteran big, and there's certainly a lot of veteran bigs floating out there. VanVleet can go. So, in the meantime, though, what did you like out of VanVleet? Why do you think the Raptors chose VanVleet based on what you saw in preseason?
I mean, I think I usually hate when broadcasters use this kind of language because I prefer more logistical analysis than the cliche kind of stuff. But honestly, I think when you watched him in the preseason, we talked about how Pirtle kind of looked uncomfortable and didn't really look like an NBA player yet. And we talk about guys being NBA ready. And I don't think there was a game in the preseason where I looked at VanVleet as like, oh, wow, that guy's not an NBA player or that guy's the kind of guy who's playing for his job. Like, I think on most nights, if not all nights, he looked like maybe not a rotation guy, but he looked like an NBA player. He looked like he fit on the floor. He's obviously not the biggest guy, and he's body-wise, he's not a prototypical modern NBA player, but, he can score in a variety of ways. The guy he can get to the basket, he can shoot. Defensively might be an issue, but yeah, I honestly just there was never a moment in the preseason where I thought, wow, VanVleet really looks kind of out of his sorts right now. He looks like he's in over his head. I just think he looked the most NBA ready and the most NBA competent, I guess, on a night-to-night basis. And I also think it's impressive that he made it because I thought going into the preseason that they'd probably end up taking a wing for that 15 spot just because we know how guard-heavy this team is, even with DeLon right out. So I think the fact that VanVleet made it is really a testament to how he gave the coaching staff no choice but to go with that option.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the coaching staff's going to go with Bruno as the depth small forward / perhaps even power forward as
He's only 2 years away, man.
Only 2 more years. I'm surprised they picked up the 4th-year option on Bebe. Or sorry, not on Bebe. On Bebe makes sense. On Bruno, sir. Yeah, because I guess whatever. You're pot committed. You knew this was a long-term project. Literally 2 years from 2 years means it's a long-term project.
And think about, like, from an optics perspective, if you don't pick up his option, what does that look like? You drafted him as a project, and Masai was very clear about the fact that this guy is a long-term project. And then after 2 years of not really, having an NBA opportunity, you're just going to be like, actually, forget the project. We're not going to pick up his option.
I can't wait until the Raptors, 20 years from now, when Bruno ends up as the best player in franchise history and we retire his number. We'll all shed a tear. We'll shed a tear and reflect back on this moment when we laughed about him getting his 4th-year option picked up. But
20 years from now, we'll be having debates about who was the better Raptor, number 5 or number 15.
I don't know if Jorge Garbajosa really deserves to be in that conversation, but or Amir Johnson. But yeah. Okay. Well, that sucks. I said only 2 more things. I was gonna say like a quick look ahead to the week ahead, just to because we actually have real games coming up now. Super quick. Just give you like a win prediction for their home opener against Detroit on Wednesday, and then Cleveland on Friday. So
I think they beat the Pistons. I think if the Pistons are healthy, they have as good a shot as anyone else in the East to grab that number 4 seed after Cleveland, Toronto, and Boston. So I don't think Detroit's a pushover by any sense, but Reggie Jackson being out, I think hurts them. I still think it'll be a good game, but I think the Raptors win that in Toronto. The Cleveland game, I also think is going to be a great game. Look, regular season and playoffs. Raptors went, I think, 4-1 against the Cavs last year at the ACC. So I think, we're past the point where the Raptors beating Cleveland in Toronto is that big of a shock. So I definitely think 2-0 is within reason, but I'd probably, if I, gun to my head, had to make a prediction, which, you might do, then I'd say 1-1.
1-1, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Detroit is they just look scattered, man. I watched that game against in the preseason against the Raptors, and they just look disorganized on offense. Obviously they're missing their point guard and Reggie Jackson, and their whole offense is around Jackson running a pick and roll with Drummond. So you take out one of those guys. Ish Smith is not the same, man. You're just not afraid of this like 5'11" dude who's fast, yeah, exactly. Sure, but he's running into bodies in the paint because it's not like Drummond's gonna pop. So I think the Detroit game should be an easy win. We're relatively easy win. I don't know. Detroit has good defenders, but their defense doesn't look great either. And then I guess Cleveland, I don't know. I don't know about Cleveland. I think they'll probably lose that one.
Yeah, I think 1-1 is probably a realistic expectation for the week. 2-0 is within reason, and I think if they go 0-2, the city will begin to burn.
Well, of course.
Well, if they go 0-2, how many? You just know there's gonna be like thousands upon thousands of unreasonable Raptors fans who are calling for Casey's head, who start talking about last year being a fluke, who think, it's back to the same old Raptors.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say it, but Raptors fans are starting to resemble Leafs fans a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw something out there that I know a lot of people don't want to hear for some reason, even though it's in the same city. What if Raptors fans and Leafs fans are the same people because they're all from Toronto?
Oh man, where I came from. I mean China. I don't mean Chinese people. I mean there's I grew up, man. You gotta choose one. That's how I remember it. You gotta choose one. It wasn't like we're gonna rep the city no matter what. It's like, nah, you're a Raptor fan or you're a Leafs fan. And I
definitely find that these younger generations, and by that I mean people 3 years younger than me, which is what I think you are. You guys definitely went with the whole gotta pick a side thing. You can't be a fan of 2 teams at once, I guess, during the winter months.
Yeah, of course, man. Look, you only got so many days. All right, when the Raptors aren't playing, you got an off night. You got to do your own stuff. So you can't be watching Leafs games all the time. But the Leafs, whatever. They look good. Yeah. All right, man. Thanks for coming on, Cash. Tell the people where they can find your writing. Tell the people where they can find you on Twitter. And all of that, man. Whatever you want to plug.
Find my writing, the usual spot at theScore. Support Will and I by coming to theScore.
Please download the Score app. It's free. Click all the apps.
Download the Score app. Come to theScore. Check out the NBA River. Refresh all the time. Check out our content. And
it's good content, guys. You'll find everything. Anything that happens in the NBA, we will get for you.
Yeah,
it'll be there.
That's absolutely accurate. And you can follow me on Twitter at Joseph Casciaro.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to take a break to listen to that super plucky Raptors Weekly theme song, and then we're going to come back in segment 2 with your Twitter questions. All right, welcome back to the second segment of the podcast. Thanks again to Joseph Casciaro for coming on the podcast. He did a great job, but now it's solo, man. It's solo. We went solo, so we are going to answer some Twitter questions. So if you ever want us to answer a question, as always, hit us up at Raptors Republic. We will either answer your question on Twitter if we're lazy, or sometimes we'll save it for the podcast. So right now, here are some questions that we got. Most of them are about the Sullinger injury, as you could probably expect. First one comes from ant_MUFC. Hypothetical, but realistically, how do you think do you think we have a chance of signing Cousins, and could we beat Cleveland with them? I mean, Cousins, if you're going to sign Cousins as a free agent, he doesn't become a free agent until 2018. So that's a couple of years from now, I guess. What the way the NBA is now, though, you got to start planning a couple years in advance. But yeah, I don't know. If you got DeRozan, Lowry, Cousins, is that enough to beat LeBron? I think certainly the Raptors will be able to do something to the Cavaliers that other teams haven't necessarily been able to do, which is that they can really enforce an interior presence. Because you got DeRozan, who's obviously great at getting to the basket. You got Cousins, who's obviously dominant in the low post. And if you look at Cleveland, like, who are their best low post defenders? Like Tristan Thompson, he's kind of light in the body. He's much better at defending in space, pick and roll, switching, all that stuff. And yeah, beyond that, it's like they don't really have any stoppers as centers. So yeah, I don't know. I think they have a chance to beat Cleveland with that roster. Plus, if it's 2018, LeBron will be older. Of course, that also means Kyle Lowry is going to be older, and I'm pretty sure Kyle Lowry isn't a human deity like LeBron is, although he's close. Kyle Lowry is close to that level. So, yeah. Also, to ant_MUFC. Tonight was a night to forget for all United fans, as you can check out that the highlights from the 4-0 Chelsea game. I'm not even a United fan, and I'm not even a Chelsea fan, sorry, and I still really enjoyed that one. But anywho. Next one comes from T.Norm. How devastated is Will because his man crushed Sully? Listen, I'm devastated because I wrote in the offseason when I was super bored. I wrote something like a 3,000-word piece on 9 things to know about Jared Sullinger. And I think a lot of that went to waste now. A lot of that went to waste. A lot of that analysis, a lot of that storytelling, a lot of that countless hours of me blogging in a Starbucks. I think that went to waste. But if you would like to not have it go to waste, you can go read that post or read all my work really at medium.com/the-defeated. So the-defeated, or just, I don't know, maybe I'll tweet it out. But yeah. And while you're there, read this piece I have on Jonas and his development. I think as we talked in segment 1 with Cash. It's sort of been on my mind because I'm a little bit concerned as to what the breakout scenario looks like for Jonas and what that means for the Raptors, whether he does or does not break out. So check that out as well. Next one from A Dose of Dylan. Know of any 6'10" people lying around that could play for the Raptors as a power forward? Give me a year and 12 inches. I guess... Who is there really out there? Like Josh Smith? Josh Smith is out there. Carlos Boozer is out there in China. Shout out to the Southern Guangdong Tigers. Who else is there? You know what I mean? Like this is the type of bottom of the barrel stuff that we're. Jason Thompson's out there. You guys want a second round of Jason Thompson? And that's probably. I could probably hook that up. So yeah, the options aren't great. The options are not great. Perhaps a trade would be a better option. Although I guess you want to play by ear for a little bit. See how Sullinger's foot reacts after the surgery, see how the rookies are playing, Siakam in particular, and if those guys are if Sullinger's really injured, and if the rookies are really struggling, then maybe you consider trading for a guy or signing for a guy, but I think in the meantime you hold pat, unless it's for Nerlens Noel, which I would fully support. Okay, next question comes from RapsFan1237. Siakam Rookie of the Year 500-1 odds. Is that worth throwing $2 on? I mean, you're throwing $2 away, but yeah, I don't think Siakam's gonna win the Rookie of the Year, man. I think Siakam tops out as a kind of like Tristan Thompson. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I really can't see Tristan Thompson winning any awards, really. and especially Rookie of the Year, which is mostly determined by scoring. My prediction for Rookie of the Year is Brandon Ingram of the Los Angeles Lakers. That guy is incredible. But, I mean, look, if Siakam has a Rookie of the Year type year, I think that will bode well for the Raptors. So, next one comes from Greg_DS_Parker. Will Siakam start at the 4 against the Pistons in order to preserve the bench unit? That's a good question. As I discussed with Cash in segment 1, I think given what we know about Dwayne Casey and how he likes to handle this stuff, I think he's probably going to keep the rotations intact. I think he will probably, they'll probably start with Siakam just so they can keep having Patterson come off the bench, because I know everyone wants the Patterson to start lineup thing, and there's certainly credence to it, but there's also arguments against it, right? And the Raptors have something that works. Raptors clearly want to run everything back from last year, this year. You didn't see any difference really in anything schematically in preseason, but it is important because the Patterson out the bench thing really does work. It manages his minutes a little bit, and also it doesn't really matter who starts the game; it matters who ends the game. So yes, I do think Siakam starts against the Pistons, and I think particularly that's a good matchup too in terms of who the Pistons have, because I think Siakam can guard a guy like Marcus Morris. We saw him guard guys like Marcus Morris. While he was in the preseason. So, I think, Siakam will probably start. But we'll see. Again, a lot of this is you got to play by ear, right? You got to see what the results are, and then you got to tweak it as you go. So, there's a lot of coaching challenges on Dwayne Casey's hands right now. Okay, next one from MR_Malice14. How concerned should we be with Pat's preseason on offense? He's been out of rhythm, and the jump shot looks broken without the hop. So, without the hop, I think it's interesting because, at least in my opinion, I'm not a shot doctor or anything like that, but I think I said on this podcast before that it looks to me like Patterson tweaked his jump shot a little bit. I wish someone was around to ask him about it. Maybe I'll try to get Blake to ask him when he goes down there and, ask him about Patterson's shot. But yeah, the Patterson shot does look different, and unfortunately, Patterson didn't look that great on offense, which you never know, really, right? But so I'm looking it up right now. Patterson's shot. Patrick Patterson. Where's his name? Patterson shot 33% from deep on 2.5 attempts per game. That's not that bad. I mean, Patterson has ups and downs with this shot, but I think the new release, I guess, again, we got to see how it goes and see. It's a long season, remember that. We'll see how it goes, but theoretically, if you can hit it as much as he did before, and the release is quicker, then that's good too, because that'll give him more shot opportunities to, more scenarios where he can get that shot off. But in terms of how concerned I am with Patterson, I don't think so, because I don't really look to Patterson as someone who's going to rely on a lot of offense anyway. Most of the time, you want him to hit enough threes so he can stretch the floor and move the defense, have the defense commit. But otherwise, he's mostly just a defender, and as a defender, he's great. So I don't think his defense will take a stumble or anything like that. Another question from Mr. Malice14, small/no sample size caveats aside, do you think Siakam and Pat mesh with Jonas better defensively than Sully? Honestly, I think Patterson is obviously the guy you want to play defensively with either Sully or Jonas, because Patterson's just a better defender. But in terms of I would rather have Patterson play with Jonas a little bit, because I think Patterson's more seasoned. He knows what to do. Whereas Siakam is a little bit more high energy stuff that I think pairs well with Sully as well. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to see Sullinger for at least a couple of weeks. So that's this kind of stuff will have to wait. Okay, next one from our guy, last week's guest, Joe Wolfon, Joey_W. Sully looked pretty spry in his one preseason game. More concerned about the time he'll miss or his fitness when he returns. See, my man Wolfon right here is asking some important questions, because he knows that Sullinger, he has a history of poor conditioning. And while I really do believe in the fact that Sullinger will keep the weight off this time, or that this is going to be a permanent change for him, because If you didn't see the piece when it first came out around the start of training camp, go back and look for it. It was Mike Ganter of the Toronto Sun, who's done some great reporting with the Raptors this season so far. He talked to Sullinger about the weight loss, and Sullinger talked about how he's what changed in his life dramatically was his grandmother died from diabetes, and he has a history of that in his family, and that really made him rethink about everything that he's doing and the things that he's taking for granted, like health, for example, the importance of that. And it's more than just like him trying to save his career, or not save his career. He doesn't need to save his career, but like trying to, advance his career or anything like that. I think it's just like you grow up to a certain age. I think Sullinger is now 24. You grow up to a certain age and you come to realize like what's important in life, what you got to do, and you eventually get to a maturity level where you understand that you need to do it, and you start doing these things. And I think Sullinger is at that point in his life. So that being said, though, spending a month off, at least a month, I would say, off the court, in addition to the month off the court he spent in preseason that he's already missed, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be good. I think anybody in that scenario with a foot injury is going to rack up some LBs on account of inactivity. So yeah, I'm concerned. I think it'll take some time for Sullinger to come back into the fold and be fully ready for productive minutes. So yeah, that is a concern. Next one comes from Sean Woodley, who we got to get on the podcast eventually. How many minutes/games would you like to see Carroll receive at the 4, and how many do you think he will get? Quite honestly, I don't think he'll start any game at the 4, because Dwayne Casey's just not that kind of guy. He's not like Greg Popovich, who, here comes the Golden State Warriors, and I have Tim Duncan, and I know Tim Duncan's going to be a bad matchup. You know what? I'll just take Tim Duncan out of the starting lineup, or, sit him down for the game because I know he's in a bad matchup. I don't think Casey is a sort of a proactive kind of tinkerer like that. He very much is beholden to his rotation. So, I don't think Carroll starts at the 4 unless the Raptors are super, super thin. I could probably see like 5 minutes, at most 10 minutes at the 4 per game for Carroll. But again, man, the Carroll at the 4 thing is no slam dunk. First of all, we have no sample size of this with the Raptors wanting to play their preferred lineup of Carroll at 4, Valanciunas, DeRozan at 3, Corey Joseph at 2, and like Lowry at 1. Like, there's just not a lot of, I don't know. I'm concerned, man. There's not a lot of track record there either. So this is this is the time for experimentation. This is in a time of crisis. You gotta try things. So. Next one, going back to Mr. Malice. A month into camp, do you think Jonas has seemed so lethargic and a step slow? Simply time off after the Olympics? I certainly do think that Jonas is rusty, but I think there are other issues as well in addition to that rust and that offseason and taking some time off in the offseason that's factoring into Jonas's play, and some of that stuff really does concern me. But for my full thoughts on this, I wrote like a very long piece about Jonas and his development. It's out right now. Like I said, medium.com/the-defeated, or just find it on my Twitter at William_Lou. It's the pinned tweet. There are concerns, I would say, because I think beyond rust or anything like that, Jonas doesn't really have much like leeway in his game. Like if he does take a step off, if he is slower, if he is more lethargic than usual, then that's a big difference on defense, because it's not like he had a lot of athleticism and quickness to draw upon in the first place. Nor is he the most attentive or aware defender. You know what I mean? Like he's not anticipating plays and things like that. So the slower he is, the less time he has to react, and he's not a very anticipatory player in the first place. So this is a problem, and I do think that Jonas has looked very lethargic. But hopefully, at least I can say that. Hopefully, it's just rest. But I'm concerned it might be a little bit more than that. Next one, again from Greg_DS Parker. Will Masai consider a trade since the Raptors are looking thin in the front court? If yes, anyone in particular? I wouldn't mind. I think the Raptors could use some depth in the front court anyway, especially since we don't know what's going to happen with Sanju once he comes back. But who do you want? Who do you want? Like, do you want him? Do you want a Kenneth Faried? I don't want a Kenneth Faried. Do you want like Nerlens Noel? I mean, I guess Nerlens Noel is a different case because I think Noel would actually fit nicely, especially if you can sign him to an extension off his rookie deal once you get him. But, as some men had pointed out, once I threw this suggestion out on Twitter that Noel's also injured, he's getting a surgical procedure of his own done on his knee, which is never good, for his plica region? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a doctor, clearly. And, he's expected to miss 3 to 5 weeks, so it's not a big thing, but, I don't think there is any such thing as a minor knee injury in the NBA, at least. So, I guess I would say yes to Nerlens Noel, depending on the price, obviously, and no to some other stopgap options. Although I wouldn't mind, because the Raptors, power forward's a big problem for the Raptors, and it has been for a long time. So, pretty much since Chris Bosh left. So, by the way, we're not signing Chris Bosh. We're not signing Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh is not going to play this year. I'm pretty sure he's not going to play ever again. Okay, next one from Gagan Pahar 33. Startling lack of faith in JV on these Twitter streets. Why do you think that is, and is it valid? Do you think, if so, do you think it's time to cash out? No, I don't think it's time to cash out, man. I mean, like, even if Jonas stops developing and this is what Jonas is, I think that's fine. Jonas is a starting caliber center with some weaknesses, but generally speaking, he's already worth what he's getting paid. That contract's already starting to look like a steal. So yeah, I don't know if you want to cash out. I mean, I think if you want to cash out, I think this is again something I wrote about in my article, which you guys should all read. The one problem there is that if you're counting on Jonas's development to become that third star to carry the Raptors into championship contention territory, I think that's a kind of a foolhardy sort of thought, because I don't quite see it. I see Jonas sort of getting better incrementally as who he is as a player, but I don't think he's going to change significantly. And as long as the team is the way it is, with Lowry and DeRozan being the 1 and 2 options, or 1A and 1B options, and Dwayne Casey being the coach running the system that he's running, I don't really see Jonas as having that big breakout or any sort of factors that will lead to that. So yeah, I guess that's probably why there's a lack of faith in JV. Also, he's looked bad in preseason. So yeah, next one from Andrei Asipov. Thoughts on Eric Kareem's article about Bruno, who's the starting power forward. So that was a great piece. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, go check out The Athletic, a new publication that's been launched here in Toronto, supporting some of the best writers here in terms of the Raptors game and also other things. You got Eric Kareem, formerly of the National Post. I think everyone knows who Kareem is. He's a great writer. Blake's also doing some work there too, so support them for sure. It's a pretty cheap subscription to read their stuff fully ad-free and stuff, and it's like $50 for a year, which is nice. It's like less than ESPN Insider, and I think you'd probably rather read Raptors inside stuff rather than league-wide inside stuff. So Kareem wrote a nice piece about Bruno's development, and apparently talking to some of the development staff there, Kareem discovered that it looks like Bruno is going to be a power forward going forward because of the way he's filled out and the way he's grown, which is not surprised because they drafted him when he was like 18. But yeah, like they kind of see him as a power forward. So that's interesting. I still think that he's the kind of power forward where he can switch multi-positions and stuff, because you look at his frame, you look at his makeup, his build, he definitely has that raw tool, the raw abilities to play multiple positions. So ultimately I still think that he's the guy who mostly plays on the wing. If he's going to be a power forward going forward, and if he's going to be anything, I think he's going to be a sort of a stretch four that's good on defense. But I mean, it's so hard to say anything with Bruno, really, because we need to see him develop. So luckily, or unfortunately for some who are tired of the Bruno experiment, he will be around for at least another year after this. So all right, next one comes from Assad, my guy. If Patterson starts, is Ross average 20 off the bench, 6-man MVP? I don't think Patterson starts, and I don't think Patterson's holding Ross back from anything. I think the only one holding Ross back from anything is pretty much Terrence Ross. So, Terrence Ross. Hey, look, Terrence Ross looked good. He looked good in preseason until he did a dumb Terrence Ross thing, which I think is just called a Terrence Ross thing, where he injured his knee, but hopefully he comes back because look, he looks strong. He looks good. He looks quick. Lithe. He shed some weight, which is weird because he was already a skinny dude, but that extra bit of quickness really helps him get a shot off, and he's a great shooter from pretty much anywhere on the court. So, yeah. In terms of MVP, though, Shaqtin' a full MVP, definitely possible for Terrence Ross. Oh, man. From Baden Kawad 1, Will at William_lose NBA career as Raptors power forward workout better than his pumpkin carving career. Man, I tried carving a Raptors themed pumpkin, and I went with the claw logo, the one that Chris Bosh, that era, with the three claws and then the central sort of what was it, I guess a fist. It did not look great. I drew some terrible reviews. I'm pretty sure I Crying Jordan the pumpkin. It's spectacularly bad. If you want to see how bad the pumpkin is, go on Twitter and find it. It's not great. It looks kind of like a bunny with 3 ears, which is a bit weird. But I'm about that Raptors life. I'm about that supporting the Raptors, and I'm gonna have this out front of my house in a week. So while I watch the Raptors, I think. So. Okay, last one of the podcast comes from Captain Observe. Do you think JV is utilized properly? I mean, yes and no. Do I think the game plan is optimized to get JV to play his best? I don't think so, no. I think JV can produce more on offense, and he doesn't really get as many chances to. But at the same time, I think the bigger question is, does maximizing JV maximize things for the Raptors? And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the Raptors' current formula is what it is. It works. They like it. They have continued to go with it. They've sort of put Jonas' development to the side a little bit to continue executing this winning formula. And, as much as, I think Jonas could be a 20 and 10 guy if you give him enough touches and enough minutes. But is Jonas getting 20 and 10 best for the Raptors? I doubt it. I don't think he's ready for that many minutes. And, perhaps I'm wrong. But yeah, in terms of using JV properly, look, I'll say this. The Raptors certainly have pockets of inefficiency that they can exploit in terms of not using JV. They could put JV in the bench unit a little bit, and we're seeing this trend happening league wide now, where a lot of these post up old school bigs are getting shoved in the second lineup, second units, and they're thriving in that scenario. You can get JV a little bit more touches and stuff like that, I guess, within the flow of the offense. But a lot of that is, dependent on JV. Look, if JV gets great post position, he should get the ball. And there are a lot of times where JV does get great post position, he doesn't get the ball. So, yeah, in those sort of scenarios, of course. But I think at the same time, the Raptors are doing pretty well, even with JV serving the limited role that he's serving. And I think that giving JV more responsibility might not necessarily be best for the Raptors. So, anyway, that does it for the podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks again to Cash for coming on the podcast. He did me a great favor there. And yeah, look, this Sullinger news really bums me out. But hopefully the Raptors get through it. Hopefully Sullinger's not that injured, because I also feel bad for the dude as well, because he was trying to get a big contract with the Raptors, signing that 1-year deal. And, this is a risk you run when you sort of pass up bigger offers, which he said he has, or his agent said he has, in hopes of sort of, getting a chance to play himself into a bigger contract. Now he gets injured. Now he has less security. It sucks. So hopefully the Raptors will be okay, but we will definitely be okay, because once we come back next week, we will have actual games to talk about. The Raptors will have played against Detroit. They would have played against Cleveland. It would have been a good time. So, thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.